After a long time, I realized that I had to bring you the entire story of Ben 10 told chronologically. And although an illustrated story is very good, nothing compares to the original images from the entire saga. So the time travel and flashbacks that have happened throughout all the sagas will finally be explained. I am Frio, and I would really appreciate it if you shared this video since it took me a lot of effort to make it. Also, I would like to know your 10 favorite moments in the entire Ben 10 saga. With all that said, I'll be quiet for a month and let's get started. Everything has its beginning and its end. In Ben 10, the beginning was represented by a blank dimension with no universe in it, where cosmic beings from a fifth dimension, known as the Contumelium, arrived on their endless expedition to create universes. Thanks to this device, the Annihilar Genesis Storia Fimiargo, or Annihilarg for short. Briefly, before the universe was about to be created, a strange and dangerous being named Maltruan arrives with his own Annihilarg. This one was different. It was programmed to create a universe in his own image, with himself as the supreme ruler. But before the Annihilarg could be activated, a hero who changes forms beyond time, known as Ben 10, arrives with his companion Rue. Using the power of all his transformations, he contains the Big Bang and defeats Maltruan, destroying his body and scattering its pieces throughout the universe. Unknowingly, Maltruan has been trapped in a time loop, destined to repeat his failure over and over again.
Would you like to see the creation of your own universe? It seems this will be the most interesting one yet.
In the face of the beauty of creation, Ben and Rue can only admire it. From here, the universe we all know is born. The unicellular ancestors, known as Weybobiets, were released into the universe. These are the most important species of creation, as they are responsible for carrying, gathering, and mixing DNA throughout the universe. Growing over the coming eons, they are essentially the creators of the most well-known intelligent life today. At some point after the universe had time to grow, a small swampy planet gave birth to a genius who would become the most intelligent being in many galaxies. Azmuth is a Galvan who will be responsible for many of the most important events in history. Since very early on, his passion for inventing and learning began to flourish alongside his partner, Zenith. His first great invention was a completely artificial planet known as Primus. Although obsessed with his own abilities, Azmuth sought to find a way to harness the fundamental forces of the universe and control the laws of physics himself. For this, he was inspired by a solitary alignment. Azmuth forged the Sword of Ascalon, a sword that wields such great power that one can't help but compare it to magic. This would force Zenith to separate from Azmuth. The Galvan was still too young and ignorant to worry about other things. Karma responded very quickly. The sword was stolen by a fierce Incursian warrior, whose goal was to put an end to the constant wars on his planet. In the end, nothing would turn out well, since all of this would lead to the destruction of his own planet. Azmuth was aware that all of this was his fault. After recovering the sword, Azmuth still longed to prove that his creation could be used for good. Eventually, Azmuth would visit Earth for the first time, where he would meet Georgius, a Roman soldier cursed with immortality who was defending Earth from an apocalyptic creature from another dimension called Dagon, and his army of insane demons. To even the odds, Azmuth offers his sword to Georgius, whom we will now refer to as Sir George. He tells him its power is so strong it could corrupt even the greatest heroes, but with no other choices. He accepts Azmuth's proposal and gets involved in an epic battle that ends with George cutting out Dagon's heart and leaving Ascalon buried along with it. Sir George founded the Forever Knights, promising to protect Earth from extraterrestrial threats and preparing for a possible second coming of Dagon. Eventually, Azmuth became an antisocial being, isolated himself on Xenon, and began developing the Omnitrix, a watch that can turn its user into a multitude of alien species. Throughout his life, Azmuth would continue perfecting what would become his greatest invention. In the 1770s, George Washington led an organization, a secret group of hunters dedicated to protecting the world from threats and supernatural rumors. Out of nowhere, Maltruan appears, crashing here and receiving help from a young exiled traveler named Vilgax, who offers to help repair his ship, in exchange for Maltruan giving him a Chronosapien time bomb. This would become a vital piece of information in the future. The two villains are soon intercepted by Ben and Rook, who were traveling through time. Both of them would take the opportunity to join George Washington in a battle against Vilgax and Maltruan. During the battle, seeing Ben transform from species to species inspired the lust Vilgax has for this power. Being so unique, Ben unknowingly became the catalyst for his greatest enemy. Washington Ben and Rook win the battle, marking the first alien sighting on Earth. As a result, Washington's organization starts handling extraterrestrial affairs. This leads to the creation of the Plumbers, who from now on are destined to fix abnormal leaks in society. Being a secret society, they are forced to have a hidden headquarters in Mount Rushmore. In 1952, an anonymous scientist works at a secret operations base on the outskirts of Bellwood. He is finishing his work on a machine that uses a quartz crystal to open a hole in space and time. Unfortunately, the machine breaks down and both the scientist and his assistant disappear, and it is believed that they are dead. 10 years later, the Air Force pilot turned astronaut Maxwell Tennyson saves the life of an energy being called Verdona since an android wanted to use her as a power source. The two eventually start a family together. Now, at that moment, a high-ranking alien police officer named LeBreed, or Magistrate LeBreed, was present. He invites Max to join his organization, leading to the integration and intergalactic fusion of that police force. With the Plumbers now cover several galaxies and operate as the ultimate law enforcement for all the galaxies under their jurisdiction. Max continued collaborating with many partners during his years with the Plumbers. On one of his missions, an Osmosian named Devin Levin gave his life for Max, entrusting him to take care of his son. Here we come to know the name of the son, Kevin Levin, who was born with the power to absorb any kind of energetic matter into himself and replicate it in his body. Of course, it would take a long time for Kevin to control his abilities. Previously, he had accidentally destroyed his house, escaped from the city, and headed to New York, where he would begin to live a rather questionable life. After a few years, Azmuth was finally able to finish the prototype version of his Omnitrix. So he entrusted Selene, one of Max's old love interests, with transporting the Omnitrix for safekeeping to the best registered plumber, who happened to be Max. The problem was that rumors of the Omnitrix's existence had spread throughout the universe. And now, a fierce warlord with a reputation named Vilgax had rekindled his hunger to try this power he once witnessed hundreds of years ago. And he set a course to intercept Selene's mission and capture the Omnitrix for himself. A fight for the Omnitrix between Selene and Vilgax's ship causes an explosion, which ends with Vilgax suffering mortal wounds, trapping him in his ship until he can properly recover. Selene ejects the Omnitrix in a capsule locked with Max's DNA. Unfortunately, this causes her to fall into the Arctic, freezing her in a deep sleep for the time being. Back in Bellwood, Max Tennyson, now retired and living in a motorhome, decides to take his grandchildren on a cross-country trip to help them grow closer. A 10-year-old Ben Tennyson, accompanied by his cousin Gwen, begins his road trip with his grandpa Max, camping in California's Yosemite Park. Through a series of events that we later learned were manipulated by greater forces, Ben crosses paths with a mysterious meteorite that fell from the sky. The Omnitrix quickly attaches itself to Ben's wrist, sparking the legend of Ben 10, the boy superhero who can transform into 10 different alien forms. Max still has to reveal his past as an alien hunter to his grandchildren, but he prefers to use his combat knowledge to train and help Ben master his powers. The trio spent the whole summer traveling from state to state, stepping in to help fight wrongdoers and save the day from time to time. During a trip to New York, Team Tennyson encounters Kevin, who uses his abilities to absorb the alien's DNA for his own benefit. His thirst for power and selfishness make him want more, so he tries to take the Omnitrix. Unfortunately, he only gets a shock that sends Kevin into hiding for a while. Here, he will experiment more with alien DNA, since it has now fused with his body. As his adventures continue, Ben begins to have visions of a mysterious watcher. Someone who has been spying on him and testing him, sending bounty hunters and alien drones. Vilgax is whole, the healing time has come to an end. And now, with a much more powerful cybernetic body, he heads straight to Earth to claim the Omnitrix as his own. He obviously succeeds in capturing Ben and reveals his plans to him, which consist of creating an army of alien warriors. With the help of the Omnitrix, Max has to reveal his story as a plumber to Wen, and the two head to Mount Rushmore to gather more weapons and save Ben. Meanwhile, a power surge on Vilgax's ship begins to affect the Omnitrix, causing Ben to change his alien forms. A final battle between Ben, Wen, and Grandpa Max against Vilgax causes the squid to get trapped in his ship, resulting in an explosion that knocks him out once again. Grandpa Max agrees to talk to the kids about his secret life, and the three become stronger and closer. As they continue their summer adventures, the trio expands their abilities. Grandpa Max comes out of retirement and starts to reacquaint himself with his old technology and weapons. Gwen becomes interested in magic after stealing a spellbook from one of his many recurring enemies. And Ben soon discovers that there are more than 10 aliens in the Omnitrix and starts to have more control over his aliens thanks to the fighting styles they can provide him. Now, let me tell you that Vilgax returns, but with a great ally, Kevin, who has now permanently damaged his body with the Omnitrix's DNA. Ben temporarily has the master control, while Grandpa Max takes advantage of the situation to lock both villains in the Null Void, this being an alternate dimension for galactic criminals. On Grandpa Max's 60th birthday, Ben and Wen are pushed 20 years into the future by Gwendolyn, an adult version of Wen, who is now a master of martial arts and magic. During this journey, Ben evaluates the arrogant and selfish behavior he develops as he matures into adulthood, so he promises to make different choices as he grows up. Ben and Wen return to their time soon after defeating Vilgax in the future. Shalane also arrives after a group of campers accidentally thawed her out and reveals to them that the Omnitrix was meant for Max, not for Ben. But she considers him worthy enough to keep it. At some point, Ben is thrown once again into the future during a Chronosapien randomizer barrier malfunction caused by 16-year-old Ben Tennyson. Ben helps his future self and his team defeat Supreme Gregor. After this event, Ben is sent back to his own time and remembers this trip as just a simple dream. Near the end of the summer, the Omnitrix's self-destruct is accidentally activated during a battle with Dr. Animo. Ben is taken into space by Tetrax, a former bounty hunter turned vigilante. His goal is to help Ben find the creator of the Omnitrix so they can help stop the self-destruction. Since we find out that it has enough power to destroy the entire universe. In the same period of time, Vilgax escapes from the Null Void and follows him, intending to steal the Omnitrix once and for all. The Tennyson team finally meets Azmuth, who at first refuses to fix the Omnitrix because he believes the universe is doomed to destroy itself anyway. In a final effort to save the universe, Ben fights Vilgax and his army without using the watch. This inspires Azmuth to put his faith in Ben as the future hope of the universe, and he fixes the Omnitrix and gives Ben one of the most powerful alien forms. Azmuth will watch over Ben from this point on, but for now he holds back from giving him the master control and encourages him to discover it on his own. On Earth, the hybrids had begun their plans for universal domination, planting sleeper agents and slowly integrating into society. Now, with summer vacation finally over, Ben and Gwen return to school. A confused father of Azmuth soon visits and declares war on Ben after receiving the wrong information that Ben has killed Azmuth. An incredible battle between giants in the middle of Bellwood turns into a catastrophe as it causes hundreds of damages in the city. The city secretly requests the help of several aliens to help rebuild Bellwood. In the process, the aliens have to camp beneath the surface, but over time these camps would grow and form their own city. A year passes and Ben unlocks a new transformation called Feedback, which he quickly becomes addicted to using. Meanwhile, in the Void, Nolo Kevin is in a prison operated by a plumber and meets a wise inmate with knowledge about Osmosians. This inmate guides and helps Kevin learn to control his anger, which was the trigger for his initial mutation. He explains that absorbing more energy makes an Osmosian crazier. Kevin learns to absorb matter, letting him create armor from any material he touches. Worrell helps Kevin escape, sacrificing his life at the hands of the prison warden, who has a deep hatred for criminals. This memory will haunt Kevin for a long time. Still trapped in the Null Void, Kevin is found and recruited by Dr. Cervantes, the leader of the Routers, a special covert operations division of the Plumbers. Cervantes was a corrupt scientist who frequently kidnapped children and experimented on them, trying to create an army of superpowered beings who could assassinate a target known as the Storm. When he met Kevin, he saw him as the key to achieving his dream, and began using Kevin's powers to experiment on himself. A new team of children are recruited for the Routers. After a period of training, the Routers are sent to Earth to execute Ben Tennyson. Now, during the battle, the assault fails, which greatly upsets Dr. Cervantes, calling the Router projector a failure. He is forced to erase Kevin's memory of him, and does the same with the other Routers. He releases them once again into the Null Void. But Kevin was not alone. His friend Argit was by his side. Kevin and Argit are forced to wander through the Null Void, and after a long time, they finally find a way out. Both become con artists, and after scandals, decide to part ways. On Galvan Prime, Azmuth returns home and becomes the first Thinker. All of this happened during the creation of the Galvanic Mechamorph, a species of intelligent nanite drops that can possess and enhance any kind of technology, living on the moon of Galvan Prime, called Galvan B. During the whole process, one Mechamorph was left incomplete, which corrupted both its biomass and its sanity. Its name was Malware. Azmuth worked to develop a cure to stabilize him, but it was considered a failure. Malware became hostile and tried to cure himself by kidnapping Albedo, one of Azmuth's assistants, forcing him to develop a cure. Unfortunately, this only further corrupted Malware, who now plans to absorb the Omnitrix and use its power to perfect himself. In a battle against Ben, he manages to steal an incomplete blueprint of the Omnitrix and begins working on a duplicate with a scientist known as Dr. Psychobos. The two realize that they need DNA samples to program into their Omnitrix and hire the services of the best hunter in the galaxy, Kyber. With him, they will be able to collect samples from the predators of Ben's aliens. Sometime later, they ambush the Tennysons, and in an effort to crush Ben's spirit, he pulls feedback from the Omnitrix and vaporizes him before Ben. This creates a block that stops Ben from using this transformation again. Malware, Dr. Psychobots, and Kyber spend the next 5 years collecting DNA samples for what they would eventually call their Nematrix. Now Ben, heartbroken over the loss of feedback, finally decides to take off the Omnitrix. 4 years later, Ben is now a normal 15-year-old teenager, living a normal life, playing normal sports and drinking smoothies. With news of Grandpa Max's disappearance, Ben puts the Omnitrix back on, aided by Gwen and Magistrate Lebret, the plumber who recruited Max, and they start their search. However, the Omnitrix begins a recalibration after Ben's 4-year hero break. Now Ben has a new Omnitrix, and with it, 10 new aliens. The three meet a young Kevin, 16 years old, who is back on Earth to make an arms deal with the Forever Knights and the Denalians, who work for someone even more powerful, the Hybrids. After a brief fight, Magistrate Lebret dies in battle, leaving the responsibility to Ben, who is motivated to continue his Grandpa Max's legacy. Kevin offers his help to defeat the Hybrids and the Denalians, while Ben is struck by a nostalgic memory where, in the future, he and Kevin were friends, so he accepts the deal. And the iconic trio of alien strength is formed using their new abilities. The trio began recruiting superpowered allies for an upcoming invasion. Some were good, others were bad, and some were quite questionable. The three eventually discover that Max is still alive and has been secretly investigating the hybrid fleet, only to pretend to die once again. He uses the projector gun and creates a grenade to kill the one they thought was the only hybrid general. Grandpa Max gives Ben and his team another chance to fight. To honor Grandpa Max's sacrifice, Ben continues his journey to form a valuable team. As the hybrid invasion approaches, many revelations are made here. Gwen discovers that her powers come from her alien grandmother and that she has been using magic to channel her abilities. The Tennyson team meets Professor Paradox, a man who was thought to have died due to a failed time travel experiment, but it is revealed that he was only thrown out of reality. Here he learned to bend time and space and to find his way back, which is the most important thing. Ben had unlocked his most powerful transformation so far, Alien X, an almost omnipotent being who can bend reality with a single thought. However, this power has many complications to use. Later, after a distress call from the Null Void by one of Ben's allies, he discovers that Max has once again escaped the clutches of death, and that the Null Void grenade ended up transporting him to this dimension, where he has started an uprising against the dictator, the Void, who is actually Dr. Annie. Ben helps the revolution, but Max refuses to leave because he believes he still has work to do there, but he promises to return someday. Meanwhile, the hybrids have set their plans in motion. The war officially begins with the fall of Galvan Prime, Azmuth's home planet. He and Paradox then set things in motion. Ben recruits all the plumber kids for a final battle against the hybrids, as they are considered the last line of defense against extinction. Azmuth at first refuses to let Ben take part in the war, since the Omnitrix is too valuable to risk losing, but after realizing that nothing will stop Ben from fighting, he grants him access to the Master Control, which gives him all the powers of the Omnitrix. Ben fights to reach the hybrid control tower, only to discover that the real Supreme Council was actually located on the original planet of the hybrids. Max returns triumphantly with his own team to give Ben the chance to head toward the Supreme Council. Here it is revealed to us that the hybrid race is actually dying, and they intend to destroy the galaxy along with themselves. Ben comes up with something: to use the Omnitrix's genetic damage repair to rejuvenate the entire toxic lineage of the hybrids. What's more, he does it. He recombines their DNA and gives them a second chance at life. With the war over, Ben Tennyson is recognized as the savior of the universe. The hybrids return home, and Max continues training the Max Force, his new team of recruits. Meanwhile, Azmuth says goodbye to Ben, who once again has lost access to the Master Control. Ben's new heroic status starts to cloud his judgment and causes his ego to rise. Months later, Vilgax arrives on Earth with Siphon and issues a Conqueror's Challenge, a galactically enforced law that allows the opponent to challenge the greatest hero of that planet, stating that the winner takes everything. Vilgax has done this on 10 other worlds, even on his home planet, which has now been renamed Vilgaxia, redeeming his status from exiled criminal to respected leader and warrior with his 10 victories. Thanks to these 10 victories, Vilgax now wields new powers and weapons to ensure victory. Kevin and Ben try to hack the Omnitrix after Azmuth refuses to help Ben because he now has a much more arrogant personality. The experiment, as expected, goes wrong, breaking the Omnitrix and releasing some of Ben's aliens into the world, and permanently mutating Kevin for the second time. The team does everything they can to recover Ben's lost aliens, but the Omnitrix is still broken. The challenge begins, and Ben seems to be the perfect match for Vilgax's new powers, until Vilgax takes the lead and destroys Piedra. Suddenly, the broken pieces of Piedra start to reform into another transformation, bringing back the old Diamond Head, one of the original 10, with whom he gives Vilgax a good beating. As time goes by, Kevin's mutation seems to be irreversible, since no one is able to figure out how to cure him. Now, Vilgax, after his defeat, continues to pursue the trio and eventually teams up with Albedo, former assistant of Azmuth, who after a failed attempt to recreate the Omnitrix was accidentally genetically altered. Now he looks like Ben. The two agreed to form an alliance to recover the Omnitrix from Ben. Albedo would use the Omnitrix to cure himself, and Vilgax would use it to rule the galaxy. Albedo eventually steals the Omnitrix core from Azmuth to complete the Ultimatrix, a device that can turn Albedo into Ben's aliens and then evolve them into their ultimate form. Both villains capture Gwen and Kevin and threaten to execute them unless Ben hands over the Omnitrix. Ben complies, and Vilgax uses the Omnitrix to power his army of bioids, finally achieving his dream of commanding an army of Omnitrix users. Vilgax betrays Albedo and keeps the Omnitrix, while Vilgax begins his reign over the galaxy. Ben activates the self-destruct on his Omnitrix through a voice command, telling Vilgax that the Omnitrix will destroy itself if he doesn't give it back to Ben. The squid thinks Ben is lying and lets the Omnitrix explode, destroying him and causing him new damage. Ben, out of options, must steal the Ultimatrix from Albedo to regain his ability to transform into aliens. With one small difference, since now he can turn into the ultimate versions of his aliens. During the battle, Vilgax's ship falls into the sea, and Ben fights him in his first forms with Ultimate Swamp Fire. Additionally, the destruction of the Omnitrix also cures Kevin, since the frequency of his original experiment is what kept Kevin in his mutated state. Now, the Tennyson team, with new abilities, continues their journey on Osmos Inkos, the home planet of the Osmosian race. A thug named Agrigor sets out to absorb the powers of 5 special alien species that would give him the power to survive the treacherous journey to collect the 4 parts of the map of infinity. Agrigor captures the 5 aliens and returns to Osmos 5, where he will absorb their powers through a special machine. The alien prisoners rebel and land on Earth, where each one would take a different path. Off the coast of the ocean, Vilgax in his true form rises, while some passersby find him too weak due to his previous battle. He couldn't return to his normal form and can barely move. So after a while, he is discovered by a man who quickly alerts the leader of the Circle of the Eternal Flame, a religious charity that secretly worships an ancient being known as Diagon. They believe that humanity was started by aliens and that Diagon would one day return to Earth for a second coming of enlightenment. Now, it just so happens that Vilgax bears a strong resemblance to him. The members of the Circle are known as the Esoterics, and as worshippers of Diagon, they have the ability to enter and exit dimensions and unleash a powerful demonic energy. Vilgax accepts his false identity as the Circle takes care of him until he recovers his health.
Oh, water, water, water.
Save Diagon, the bearer of knowledge!
Life seems to have fallen into repetition for the trio until Ben discovers that his secret identity has been revealed to the world. This brought him a lot of unwanted attention in the media and in his personal life. The trio traced the leak to a small blogger named Jimmy Jones, who figured out Ben's secret on his own. He takes advantage of the situation to inform him about an alien who is stealing parts of a nuclear bomb in Florida. Kevin unleashes his new ship, the Rose Bucket 3. and sets course for the mentioned destination where they meet him. This is the first of the 5 Andromeda aliens that he agrees to rescue and help return to their home worlds. Although in the end it doesn't matter, Agrigor always had the advantage of recovering the aliens for himself, completing his mutation as Supreme Egregor. The next battle leaves Max with nerve system damage, leaving him stranded on Galvin Prime while he recovers. Paradox claims that he was the one who hid the 4 pieces of the Map of Infinity, which starts a race between Supreme Egregor and the trio. Despite their efforts, Supreme Egregor proves to be very intelligent and powerful. He manages to gather the pieces of the Map of Infinity, which grants him access to the Forge of Creation, the place where the Celestial Sapiens are born, the race of Alien X. Now, Paradox is forced to take the trio to the entrance of the Forge. Here, Ben accidentally gets tangled up with a chrono-randomization barrier, which manages to push his 10-year-old self out of his timeline, only to form a temporary team of generations.
How did you break the Omnitrix again?
I didn't break it, I just...
Are we there yet?
Yes, I think so.
The Bens, Gwen, and Kevin fight against Supreme Egregor on the palms of a giant celestial sapien mother, where Egregor plans to absorb her child and gain omnipotence, since the imminent celestial sapiens don't have the same drawbacks as their adult selves. Now, just as he's about to succeed, Kevin sacrifices his sanity and absorbs the powers of the Ultimatrix, creating Supreme Kevin, who would defeat Agrigor and also absorb his powers. The overwhelming imminent power drives Kevin insane, and the trio temporarily breaks up. Meanwhile, Paradox takes young Ben back to his own timeline. He will be able to remember these events as a dream, so that Ben can vaguely recall a future in which they were once best friends. Kevin's unintentional betrayal creates a rift between Ben and Gwen. Gwen still supports the idea that Kevin could be changed and that they should save him no matter what. Ben disagrees, saying that Kevin has obviously gone too far and that they should kill him before anyone else gets hurt by him. Meanwhile, Supreme Kevin is hungry for power and attacks many of his old friends and enemies alike, including the Max Force and the Guardian who killed his childhood friend who helped him escape. With the help of the longtime enemy Darkstar and Cooper, Ben and Gwen each try their own way to deal with Kevin. Gwen tries to appeal to his reasoning, which fails, and Ben has no choice but to face Kevin in a battle where both of them almost die. Luckily, Darkstar and Cooper finish a device that can cure Kevin. This is powered by the remains of the Dominus Librium, an ancient energy-conducting artifact believed to be of extraterrestrial origin. With Kevin cured, the trio is finally reunited. Max has recovered from his injuries, and everything seems to be fine in the world. Until the Eternal Knights, who continue their ancient tradition of finding and exploiting alien technology. They come across an old seal with a symbol, which they believe is a weapons vault. Luckily, the vault is too strong to be opened completely. Unfortunately, they create a small opening which releases a creature that starts wreaking havoc in Bellwood. This gets the trio's attention, and they team up with the Forever Knights to find the creature. When they find it, the creature seeks out Gwen, embedding itself in her mind and controlling her temporarily. Fortunately, the trio frees her, leaving Gwen with new memories, which reveal that the creature is actually a demon that feeds on prayers called Insanity, who is a small servant of a great being named Dagon. Now, let me tell you that what they broke was actually a seal that kept the beast away. Now, this beast is slowly being set free. The broken seal also alerts an old man from the senior center, known simply as George, who starts heading toward the seal, confirming that it is broken. Now his quest to kill Dagon begins once again. He goes to Area 51 and teleports the entire base to the side of a mountain, using it as a place to carry out his operations. Meanwhile, the trio encounters Paradox and Ultimate Ben, another version of Ben from the future. Ben realizes that every time he meets his future self, his future changes. But for now, this future comes with the power to access his transformations while in his human form. For now, everyone will join forces to help put an end to Ion, an evil time walker who has been traveling across the multiverse killing the different Ben Tennysons. It is later revealed that he is only recruiting them for his personal motives. The ultimate trio, Ben and Paradox, manage to defeat Ion by discovering that his version possesses the hands of Armageddon, which are said to exist simultaneously in all possible universes. Ultimate Ben returns to the future after giving Ben some new transformations, and Paradox warns Ben,
"Be careful with old George, be careful with the creature from beyond."
At that moment, Old George holds a meeting at Area 51 with the leaders of each faction of the Forever Knights. He proclaims that the Forever Knights must carry out their true order. To exterminate all the aliens on the planet, he upgrades the Forever Knights with advanced armor and special vehicles, all to complete the purge. This officially begins with the death of Pierce, one of Max's students, which prompts the trio to intervene and then put an end to the purge. Then they discover that all of this was a distraction, since George's real goal was to get back the Step Sword, which is found piercing the heart of the dragon in a kind of fortress that teleports. Fortunately, George was able to calculate where the fortress would appear, so Gwen and the gang followed him closely. In the fortress, Sir George and the trio encounter Vilgax, who was brought by the Circle of the Eternal Flame, who still think he is Diagon. Their goal is to reunite Diagon with his heart so he can regain all his power and save humanity. While a battle takes place between the Esoterica and the Forever Knights, Vilgax grabs Escalon. Empowered by the sword, he returns to his normal form. Then he hears the voice of the real Diagon, telling him that he is aware of his mischief, but that he will actually grant him supreme power if he becomes his servant. Vilgax wastes no time and tries to return to the seal to break it, but he is only consumed inside it. Leaving Escalon in George's hands, the sword restores his youthful strength, and the Old George says that Dagon is his mission. The trio decided to retreat and let Old George handle it. Weeks later, they inspect the Circle of the Eternal Flame's hideout, but find no one. But thanks to the alien clockwork, they discover that they have gathered around the seal with an army of esoterics to help free Dagon once and for all. The Eternal Knights, led by Sir George, prepare for the final war against the esoterics. The battle is so great that there must be losses. One of them is Sir George's squire, who is quickly avenged by taking down the leader of the Circle of the Eternal Flame, who with his last breath still proclaims his loyalty to Dagon. Ben soon meets Sir George on the battlefield, where both face Vilgax, who has now been granted demonic power by Dagon. In order to destroy the seal, the new version of Vilgax seems to match the battle against these two powerful beings. Now, unfortunately, time is running out and the seal ends up breaking. More of Dagon's power is released on Earth, which turns all living beings on the planet into esotericas. Aside from Sir George and the trio, who were protected by Wen, however, the seal is still not completely broken. Unsatisfied with Vilgax, Dagon reconnects with Wen through a flaw he implanted during the Lakabra incident, which is why he forces him to break the seal.
That's easy, love.
Unfortunately, Wen succeeds, and Dagon is released into the universe. The creature rises above them with a divine presence and begins to fight against the trio and Sir George. As the last defense against humanity, Dagon turns Sir George to dust and finally defeats him. With all hope lost, it's Vilgax who appears to defeat Dagon. The squid has revealed his true intentions, absorbing its power into himself in the same way he stole the power from the other 10 worlds he conquered. Now with Vilgax using Dagon's power, Ben must wield the Sword of Ascalon. He fulfills Sir George's destiny, putting an end to Dagon's power forever. Now, after absorbing Dagon's power into the sword and armed with the Ultimatrix, Vilgax proclaims Ben as a god and urges him to use his power to reshape the universe in any way he desires. Tempted by near omnipotence, Ben rejects the power and returns the sword to Azmuth. Azmuth is impressed by the personal growth Ben has shown. He is no longer the same arrogant fool who once saved the universe from the Jaime invasion, so he considers Ben worthy of the new complete Omnitrix. The trio returns to their usual hero routine until Ben reveals that he's accepting a scholarship to go to college and that Kevin is going with her. Breaking up the Alien Force team, Grandpa Max sends a newly graduated student from the Plumbers Academy named Rook Blanco to be Ben's new partner. The two slowly begin to work out their differences, fighting crime in the underground city known as Undertown, formed by the alien camps that helped rebuild Bellwood in 2007. Without warning, they come across a drifting spaceship that is rumored to belong to the Contumalia, the creators of the universe, and that on board there is an Annihilar which can create and destroy universes. In an uneven fight to get the Annihilar against other enemies, the device is accidentally activated, eradicating everyone and everything in the universe except for Ben, who protects himself as Alien X. He has finally begun to master his power and uses Alien X to create a new universe to replace the previous one. Although it's not an exact duplicate, and so far no one except Ben believes this really happened, after 5 years, Malware finally continues his pursuit against Azmuth. Kyber is sent to hunt and capture Ben with his beast, now armed with the Omnitrix, which contains the DNA of the predators of Ben's respective aliens. Ben fights against them, knowing that he's naturally at a disadvantage, but thanks to his new partner, he manages to come out victorious. He realizes that having Rook on his side would be very helpful, so over time, they strengthen their bond as true partners. Now, even with their teamwork, Malware has improved himself enough to launch an attack against Galvan 2. They start by destroying its moon and disabling all the mechamorphs. Malware continues with his insatiable thirst for revenge, absorbing and transforming into a colossal monster. Ben fights to defeat Malware, but he is absorbed into him. Here he has an existential confrontation with his younger self. This revelation restores Ben's old feedback transformation in his new Omnitrix and becomes the catalyst that puts an end to Malware once and for all. The adventures of Ben and Rook continue as they save the planet from the Incursian invasion, preventing Albedo from permanently stealing Azmuth's brain and freeing the Anner system from the evil clutches of Lord Transil. Now, let me tell you that Paradox returns once again with a warning that the entire multiverse is in danger. Keon and Vilgax have joined forces and have been traveling together through time for years, gathering an army of evil Bentenisons for a war. The battle will take place in an alternate universe, where one of the Bens never found the Omnitrix because the Omnitrix never even existed here. That universe is the target of the evil Bens. Luckily, Ben Prime arrives to try to save it. He, along with Paradox, Ben 23, Wen 10, and Ben 10,000, another future version of Ben who has the power to fuse his transformations into something epic, gather for the battle, but they realize that all of this was just a distraction, which allowed Vilgax to activate a chrono-sapping time bomb, erasing all the Bentenisons from the timeline, except for the Ben without the watch. In a final desperate act, Ben Prime tries to save his watchless version, leaving him a message that would set him on his true path.
It's just a watch, be a hero.
Paradox takes this turn on a journey to restore the timeline and reveals that these two were the ones who manipulated the events of Ben Prime's timeline, so that he could receive the Omnitrix in the first place. The Ben without a watch also helps Paradox gather the good Bens for the battle, but he stays behind when the war starts again. When the time comes, he steps in, reversing all the events of the Chronosapien bomb and restoring the multiverse, then returns the Omnitrix to Ben Prime. With all the bearers ready, they easily defeat Vilgax. Returning to the original dimension, Ben is put on trial by the Celestial Sapiens. He must answer for illegally recreating his universe with Alien X, since he has been violating the law of multiversal preservation. After a short time, the court rules that Ben is guilty, but as a last resort, they activate the Tetraman Trial of Combat, which will allow him to fight for his freedom. Now he will have to fight against a unique Celestial. It is during this battle that Ben finally gains full control of Alien X and defeats the Galactic Gladiator, clearing his name. With the whole universe now aware of what Ben has done, Cervantes finally returns after realizing that the dangerous threat known as Ben Tennyson has put the Omnitrix back on. Cervantes restores Kevin's childhood memories of being the main Rooter killer, which prompts Kevin to do the same with the others who had lost their memories. After a big series of events, Team Tennyson, along with Argent and the young plumbers, take everyone to the Rooters headquarters located in the Null Void. Cervantes takes advantage of the situation and physically takes control of the Amalgam Kids. But he can't do this with Kevin, so instead he corrupts him by mocking him because Ben ruined his childhood and imprisoned him. Kevin switches sides, loses control, and mutates again. In battle, he gets a scar on his chin that would leave him permanently marked. Kevin surprises everyone by revealing that since his last mutated incident, he has gained control of his powers. And he was pretending to be insane the whole time to get close to Cervantes and destroy his connection with the Amalgam Kids. When the time comes, they defeat Cervantes and leave him stranded in the Null Void. The Time War now gets underway as the enemies from the future, Subdora and Exo Skull, are tasked with collecting all the Maltran pieces scattered across the multiverse. To become whole again, many time travel events lead Ben and Rook to team up with Ben's future son Kenny and Skirt, a slime bite who found his way into Ben's Omnitrix, which allows him to form special weapons and tools based on the Omnitrix's DNA. Their goal is to prevent Maltran from succeeding, but this journey follows Ben into adulthood. Now, 36-year-old Ben is fighting to prevent Maltran from building his own corrupt arc ring, and travel back to the beginning of time to remake his universe in his own image. Thanks to a gift from Paradox and Ben 10,000, Ben and Rook use their special time bikes to follow Maltran in a race literally against time. They manage to temporarily pull Maltran out of the time vortex, leaving him stranded on Earth in the 1770s. Maltran sends a distress signal that is received by a young Vilgax, who agrees to repair his carriage in exchange for a Chrono Sapien time bomb. For their part, Ben and Rook team up with George Washington to fight against them. Now, Vilgax is determined to get the Omnitrix. Meanwhile, Maltran manages to escape back to the Vortex. Both arrive at the beginning of time to come face to face with the Contumelia's ship. Here they are greeted by 3 multiversal gods, who appear before them in the form of their heart's desire, so that they can be physically perceived in their 5th dimensional forms. Maltran, having arrived first, sets his plan in motion with the corrupt Analar. Skur is forced to create a celestial sword. But let me tell you, it's too late. Ben has no choice but to dive after the Analar. As a last effort to save the universe, hope prevails. And using the power of all his transformations, Ben contains the Big Bang and fires it at Maltran, scattering his body into pieces so that Paradog can hide his parts throughout the multiverse, dooming Maltran to repeat his failure over and over, trapped in an endless time loop. Ben says goodbye to Skur, who wishes to join his ancestors in the development of life. The Contumelia are impressed by their observations and invite Ben and Ruga to stay and witness the true birth of their own reality. The Annihilator is finally placed in the chamber and sent into the endless void. From there, the universe is born.